Hi, and welcome to this session of training on pastoral in the local church. This is part of a series of videos that has been produced to help you and give you some basic information and facilitate some conversation between you and your mentor. We want to spend these next minutes together talking about some things that are going to help you and that you will encounter in your first year or so as a licensed local pastor or as you're stepping in to serve as a DSA. I'm Reverend Carol Blair Bouse. I'm an ordained elder here in the Michigan Conference. And today we're going to spend these minutes talking about what most people find really boring, but if done right, can make your life much easier, and that is church administration. We're going to address the basic committees of the church conference and year-end reports, the single board governance model, church finances and ministry shares, and even touch base quickly on how better to run meetings, and last but not least, your relationship with the district superintendent and the district committee on ordained ministry. So, let's refresh our memory. The purpose of the local church is to reach out and receive with joy all who will respond to the good news of Jesus Christ, to provide opportunities for people of all ages to grow in their relationship with God through Christ, and to learn to respond with justice and mercy in our world. Now, the church is organized by calling of our annual charge or church conference. Here in the Michigan Conference, we typically have our annual church conference to organize ourselves for another year. This is open to all members of our congregation and is led by the district superintendent or their designated elder. Occasionally, a charge conference has to be called. This is simply the elected members of the church council. They will meet on behalf of the entire congregation. But either way, at this annual meeting, pastoral salaries are approved, leadership is elected, lay speakers endorsed, and reports received. Other business can include candidates for ministry, endowment changes, and large building projects. This meeting is typically held in the fall, but a special meeting can be held if needed at other times of the year. But no matter whether scheduled or special request, you must have 10 days notice with 2 public notices given. So what do you need to do before we can have this annual meeting? Usually, in the late spring or summer, you'll have a supervisory meeting with the district superintendent. It may be an individual meeting, or it may be held in a group setting. This is where your annual self-evaluation will be reviewed along with other documents that may be assigned. And these forms are usually due 10 to 14 days before this meeting to give the district superintendent time to review them. Then, throughout the summer, you should be working with your PPRC to complete and review and share and compare that evaluation with the evaluation they are working on to create a plan of improvement for the following year before the PPRC meets with the district superintendent, for they need to have completed their work, their review of you, to share with the district superintendent along with their recommendation for a pastoral salary. The trustees, finance, membership, and the profile of the congregation forms also need to be completed. These should be put and completed by the appropriate committees with your support. You will also need to write an annual State of the Congregation report. And this packet of reports should be prepared for this meeting. And once your church is set in order for another year by your church or charge conference, the work of your committees begins. Now, the main committee we need to talk about is our church council. Now, some of our churches may be using a single board governance model. If that is you, please note we will talk briefly about that model last. A single board governance model has all of the other administrative functions of the church all wrapped into one single committee, except for the Committee on Nominations and Lay Leadership. The church council is the body that is administrating committee of the congregation. It provides the structure for the planning, implementing, and reviewing of programming for the entire congregation. They are also tasked with the mission and vision statements of the congregation and ensuring that all ministries of the church are aligned with those statements. It's a big job. It shall meet at least quarterly, and its basic membership include the chairperson, the lay leader, the lay member to annual conference, the church treasurer, hopefully a young adult representative, a representative from UMYF, the pastor, a chairperson or representatives from the following committees: PPRC, Finance, Trustees, then UMW and UMM, and it should oversee the work of Nurture, Outreach, and Witness. And then, of course, other people can be included in your church council as determined by your local church. So let's take a minute to talk about those administrative committees: the PPRC, Finance, Nominations, and Trustees. So the Pastor Parish Relations Committee is designed to meet at least quarterly. This committee has a couple of major functions. First and foremost, it serves as a liaison between the congregation and the pastor. This will be the first committee you will meet with upon your introduction to the congregation. You were there with your district superintendent. This committee's role is to support you as a pastor. It also has that role of evaluating you annually. And as issues of conflict arise, it is them that do most within the congregation. And it is the PPRC that is the committee that addresses it. And we invite them to use the model of Matthew 18 in conflict resolution. These meetings are strictly confidential, and the pastor shall be present at all meetings except where they voluntarily excuse themselves, or in the meeting with a district superintendent when the pastor knows of the meeting. Now, when a church has any kind of paid staff, this is the committee that's responsible for personnel issues: hiring, evaluating, and firing. This is the committee that's also responsible for nurturing all of those who are discerning a call into ministry and those who are interested in the lay servant ministry. This committee shall have between 5 and 9 people, all of which who must be professing members of the congregation, plus the lay leader and the lay delegate to annual conference. The members should be divided into 3 classes, each 3 years in term, and the retiring members are able to succeed themselves one time. Only one person from an immediate family residing in the same household shall serve on the committee, and no staff person or member of the staff person's family or the pastoral family may be a member. So the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is an oversight committee. Its membership is made up of the chairperson, who's nominated by the Committee on Nominations. along with the chairpersons or representatives of the following committees: Church Council, PPRC, and trustees. And then the pastor, the lay leader, the treasurer, and the financial secretary. Now there may be additional at-large members if desired. Note the treasurer and the financial secretary should not be combined and held by one person. And the persons holding those two positions should not be members of the same family. Now, I said that the Finance Committee is an oversight committee. What I mean by that is that the role of the Finance Committee is not to control the money, but it is to inform and guide the Church Council on the church's current financial state. This committee is also responsible for the creation of the budget to be presented to the Church Council for approval. This committee is also responsible for the annual stewardship campaign, to create financial policies, and oversee collection of, recording, and distribution of all financial gifts, and also to oversee the annual audit. Remember that stewardship is not simply about money. Each year, your church should be holding an annual time of stewardship. Traditionally, churches have held this this time in the fall, but more and more churches are moving this time to late spring. Stewardship is a time of giving, of our prayers, our presence, our gifts, our service, and our witness. That's what we commit to when we become a member of the United Methodist Church. Too often, when we stop and think about stewardship, we simply think about it in terms of our money. I knew of a woman who was unable to make a true financial gift, but she asked if she could do some custodial work at the church, for that was her business. So instead of a financial gift, she gifted the church several hours of her time each week as her tithe as she cleaned the church. It took time to help our money people understand that it was a true gift to the church that she was giving. The Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is the legal entity of the congregation. It is the corporate board of the church which is responsible for signing any legal document. They are also charged with overseeing the maintenance of all church-owned properties, which includes both grounds and buildings, including the parsonage. They would also be overseeing any insurance issues, endowments, and memorial funds, unless separate committees have been named and set aside. This committee shall be between 3 and 9 people, and 2/3 of whom shall be professing members of the congregation, and all must be of legal age. The members should be divided into 3 classes for 3-year terms, and retiring members may succeed themselves once. The officers of the Board of Trustees will be elected among themselves. The parsonage is always a big question when it comes to the trustees and new pastors. My best advice in all the years that I've served is to help them see the house as your home. Help them also understand that you live there, yet find opportunities to invite people over if at all possible. By getting people into the parsonage, when you welcome them in, they can see challenges in the house that you might not. Also, don't see the walkthrough annually as an invasion of privacy. See it as an opportunity to make things better. Your attitude will make all the difference. The more you can work with people to make the parsonage your home, the more successful you will be in helping people see it as your home, not just their parsonage. The Committee on Nominations and Leadership Development is designed to work throughout the year and to train and develop spiritual leaders not just right before charge conference. This committee should be not more than 9 people who are members of the congregation, plus the pastor and the lay leader. The pastor is the chairperson, and a lay person is the vice chair. Hopefully there's a young adult and possibly a youth. Again, it's divided into 3 classes for 3 years, and there's no decision on whether people can succeed themselves. Note that recommendations for that class should come from the floor. Now, there are other committees you may have in your congregation that oversee the ministries of nurture. They include areas of education, spiritual formation, and worship and member care. Special attention should be to think about all ages in this area. Or outreach, local and larger community ministries of compassion, of justice, and advocacy. Think food pantries and campus ministries, church and society. Or witness, developing and strengthening efforts to share our stories, our communications, lay servants, and walk to Emmaus. Other committees could have other names: missions, worship design, Christian education, evangelism. My best suggestion with all of these is that they each function so differently in every church I've ever served. Sit down, listen, and try to understand what each currently does and how it desires to function, and if it aligns with the mission and vision of the current congregation. And if not, help it to. You most likely have units of United Methodist men and United Methodist women. If you do, great. If you don't, or you don't know how to relate to these organizations, don't hesitate to contact the district office, and they can give you the current contact information for district presidents of each of these organizations. Take my advice. Go to a meeting once or twice a year. Let them know you care. Now, I said I would get to single board governance model after the individual committees were there. A single board governance model is a way in which churches have used to bring all their committees to the table at one time. A single board governance model is one in which the church council, pastor parish, finance, and the board of trustees are held by the same 9 to 13 people. Now, this isn't just a structure for small churches. Many large churches find this to be very efficient and effective way of doing the business of the church. The major difference in a single board governance model is it moves away from the reporting and the day-to-day oversight of the committee model to an accountability leadership style. The board sets guiding principles, things like budgets and policies and goals, but it doesn't do day-to-day operations. Unlike the days when you had 9 members of trustees and they used to take care of every single building issue, the 9 to 13 members of your governing board aren't going to do that. They'll set up the goal and the oversight, but they won't, as their role on the governing board, do the day-to-day work. They'll create task force to do that. Same way with hiring. That might become the responsibility of the pastor or a small team, not the whole board, depending on the way you create your governing guidelines. If your church is working from a single board governance model, make sure you have read and understand those governing guidelines that were established. Also, make sure you communicate with the whole congregation. It is probably the most biggest and deepest pitfall that this form falls into. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Every single board governance has a few things in common. It will have at least 9 people. They need to have professing membership, plus the pastor, the lay leader, and the lay delegate to annual conference. Again, they should be divided into 3 classes, each for 3-year terms. So we get to things like the year-end report. And I don't know about any of you, but I don't like year-end reports. But they're a part of life. Every year we're responsible for assuring the completion of the year-end statistical report. To complete this, you'll need your financial information, attendance, and membership. Your secretary, your financial secretary, your treasurer, and your membership secretary will be the most help in filling all of this out. It's due at the end of January. Don't put it off. It's not that hard. Ministry shares. They're a part of being in a United Methodist congregation, and each congregation has been assigned a portion. It used to be called apportionments here in the Detroit Conference. Mission ministry shares are monies used to cover the cost of ministries for our districts, our conference, and the general church. They include such things as salaries, grants, building rentals, programming, and support here in Michigan. And in the general church, they even include things such as work around the world in Africa University. And then on top of our general ministry shares, we also are apportioned our benefit ministry shares. And that's our pension costs as a pastor. We also have our 6 special Sundays, along with other giving opportunities. Don't forget that we're a connectional church. And then we think about when we meet together and running our meetings. We make sure we touch base with each other and our chairperson before our meetings. Not having a plan of attack and knowing what is coming makes everybody uncomfortable. Intentionally taking up to a quarter of our time in our meeting for spiritual formation, it will help make everyone understand just how important it is for your development and for theirs. You will get pushback, I guarantee it, but it is vital for the development of the committee as a whole. Also, when you look at your agenda, consider moving your treasurer's report to the end of the meeting. When you start the meeting with a money report, especially in difficult financial times, it can cloud every decision you make. Also, make sure you have your report submitted ahead of time and spend time visioning instead of hearing about the past, except to review and evaluate. And finally, when you come to the end, when you need to understand your role with the district superintendent, he or she is both your pastor and your supervisor. He or she is there to support you and to challenge you to grow in your ministry. Their role is not as your adversary or your enemy, nor are we as the district committee and ordained ministry. We are here to help you and support you. We will see you every year to encourage, support, and to help you grow.